Mars retrograde is without a doubt one of the major and most important transits of the end of 2022. So stay with me and let's explore what this retrograde will mean for us collectively, as well as for us on a personal level. Hello, my name is Justina, and if you are new here, I'm a Western astrologer. I follow the tropical zodiac along with the whole sign system in all the forecasts on this channel, so welcome. Now, if you are a returning viewer, welcome back and thank you for joining me today. So here we are approaching a very important event of the end of 2022. This is Mars retrograde. As I was preparing for this video this morning, I had to train my brain to make sure I don't say Mercury retrograde, because we've just had Mercury retrograde and we still have, as I'm recording this video, so it's a Mars retrograde in Gemini, and this retrograde will begin on October the 30th and it will end on the 12th of January 2023, and it will begin at 25 degrees of Gemini, it will end at 8 degrees of Gemini, so it will only be in this sign. Gemini, the sign of communication, transportation, rational thinking. So here this transit of Mars in Gemini began on the 20th of August and it will last until March the 26th of 2023, so it's a very long transit, and of course this prolonged transit is as a result of Mars retrograde. So Mars retrograde happens every 2 years roughly, and usually Mars retrograde brings some really meaningful, memorable events. The last time Mars retrograde occurred, that was at the very end of 2007 and throughout January 2008. And that retrograde wasn't purely in the sign of Gemini. Well, it started in Cancer and then Mars went back into, or retrograded back into Gemini. Now, as I was researching some interesting events that took place during that time, I came across something really quite remarkable, and that was, so during that Mars retrograde in Gemini, NASA sent a messenger spacecraft into space, and that messenger spacecraft made its first flyby of the planet Mercury, and that was on January the 14th. So see how amazing Gemini, the messenger, Mercury, the messenger. So here that all occurred during that Mars retrograde in Gemini. So that was so interesting. So if you want to think back what happened in your life, especially during that January 2008, perhaps some themes from that period of time could return back into your life, or perhaps you could experience something similar. Might not relate to everyone, but perhaps you might find it helpful. When planets retrograde, so they get closer to the Earth, so their symbolism, what they represent and stand for, is felt more strongly at these times. With Mars retrograde in Gemini, projects will take longer to take off, to show some substantial results, so we will have to be patient. Now here, Mars is the planet connected to our courage, our drive, motivation, high energy. When Mars is retrograde, life seems to move at a slower pace. It might be more difficult to self-motivate ourselves, to get anything off the ground. Now, we might also have to redo some things, so don't get overly frustrated, because this retrograde will affect all of us collectively as well as all of us individually. So here, during the time when Mars is currently direct in Gemini, it's really essential not to take too much on your shoulders, because once Mars stations retrograde, if you haven't done good planning, you may realize that you have set yourself up for frustration by overloading your schedule, by overloading your daily life. Now, if you have any placements at around 25 degrees of Gemini and 8 degrees of Gemini, around about these degrees, then You can expect or see some important developments happening in your life around the end of October and middle of January. So this will all depend where Mars Gemini is happening in your life, what planet it activates, and what area of life rules this planet. So here with Gemini activation and Mars being here, this is like being pulled in two different directions. And with Mars being retrograde, it might be even more difficult to see the pros and cons of certain situations, ideas, and make the right choices. So here we will have to pause and think things through before committing, especially to something important and meaningful in our life. Mars retrograde might not be the best time for starting anything new, brand new, or perhaps for starting a new business, launching a new product, because you might not be satisfied with the initial results. It might take you longer to take anything off the ground at this time, but also any activities connected to competitive work might show better results after January the 12th or even January the 18th, because during January and the last days of December, Mercury will also be retrograde. Now here, since Mars also rules anything connected to sharp objects, anything connected to surgeries, surgeons, if you're planning on having any elective surgery during this retrograde, then here again, if you can push it forward and have it done after at least January the 18th, at which point both Mars and Mercury will be in a direct motion, then it will be much better for doing so. Now, bear in mind, next year we'll have Venus retrograde as well. However, it will only happen in the middle part of 2023. Now, Mars retrograde might not be that frustrating all the way, because we will have some really interesting transits. And at this time, Saturn, the planet connected to structure and discipline and consistency, responsibility, will be in the sign that is compatible with the sign where Mars is present. And when Mars and Saturn connect harmoniously, this can lead to a greater ability to reach our goals and milestones, especially towards the second part of November, when Mars will trine Saturn. So we had similar energies towards the end of September, when Mars and Saturn connected harmoniously. So when Mars and Saturn connect yet again, and at that point Saturn will be in a direct motion, Mars will be retrograde, you might have a chance to go back to those projects, ideas that perhaps you didn't have a chance to complete or even bring to life during Mars and Saturn transit in the second part of September. Since Mercury rules Gemini, during Mars retrograde in Gemini, we might see some mercurial incidents taking place, and some of them may include major roadworks or perhaps some travel disruptions, for instance. Now, anything connected to movement, transportation could be also disturbed throughout this time. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much. Just to recap, Mars retrograde might affect self-motivation, drive, assertion, or the ability to assert oneself. However, we've got some positive transits. Mars will connect harmoniously with Saturn throughout this transit. Saturn is in the sign that harmoniously connects with Mars. So this is great because this helps us to achieve certain goals and milestones. This is not a good retrograde for launching any new products or any new businesses. It's better to delay those until the end of January 2023, at which point both Mars and Mercury will be direct. Any elective surgeries, this is also not a great time for doing so here. Mars rules sharp objects, surgeons. So here again, if you can delay them until the second part of January, it will be more beneficial for you. Bear in mind, Venus will be retrograde mid-2023, so that wouldn't be a good time for doing any kind of Botox or any surgeries, treatments connected to beauty, as well as needles or surgeries. So here, Mars retrograde is good for reviewing, reassessing certain objectives in our lives, relationships. Now here, communication will also be very important. Exchange of information, how we exchange this information, how we share information with others, how we communicate. Communication skills will be also very much highlighted. Now, also with this retrograde, things from the past might come back as well into our lives. People, situations as well. All right, so let's explore this Mars retrograde and see what it brings for you on a more personal level. This forecast is most accurate for the rising sign. However, you can also watch it for your moon sign or for your sun sign if you wish. So thank you. Hello, Aries, and welcome to your horoscope for this coming Mars retrograde in Gemini. This retrograde will affect you on a deeper level because Mars is your ruler. So here you will feel these energies. It might be more difficult to self-motivate yourself or stay consistent with a certain project idea. However, if you want to return into something that you perhaps left unresolved in the past or you didn't have a chance to complete, this would be a good time for doing so. This could include anything to do with learning, studying, so short courses, probably self-development courses as well. But also, this could be related to if you have your own business, you might be fixing your website. If you have an Etsy shop, for example, or an eBay shop, you might be also fixing or modifying your account, your listings, for example. Now, this retrograde might also question some important relationships in your life, perhaps with your neighbors, people from your community, siblings, relatives, cousins. You might get in touch with some of them as well throughout this time. And this will be also a good time for resolving any issues, dilemmas. Now, travel is definitely emphasized as well. And here you might be visiting places that you have been to in the past. But here, be cautious with driving. Mars in the third house especially is... well, you might be speeding without realizing it, or perhaps generally make sure you check your car and you check your speed throughout this time and generally throughout the transit of Mars in Gemini until March 26th of 2023. Now, this retrograde also shows a need to gain clarity on your personal goals, on the kind of image you want to present to the outside world. Your appearance comes into focus as well, here with Mars being your ruler. And generally, you might also, at some point during this retrograde, you might feel a lack of direction. You might feel slightly lost. You might be questioning every step that you take, or perhaps reviewing, reassessing your goals in order to make better decisions moving forward. Now, here you might feel like you're going backwards instead of forward at times. Now, here, as this retrograde is most certainly about gaining this clarity about yourself, about your outer image, as well as the clarity regarding your life direction as well. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much. And let's move into the next sign. Taurus rising Mars retrograde will be in your sphere of finances. So here, anything to do with your financial situation is emphasized at this time, as well as your self-worth, self-esteem, your resources, possessions. Now, you might be returning to some ideas from the past regarding money-making goals, for instance, but also your money spending habits come into focus. And you might want to gain a greater clarity of where is it that you stand with your finances, how you can improve your financial situation moving forward. Safety and security here is emphasized. And generally here, the second house is connected to being self-reliant and independent, financially independent. So that independence might be also questioned, might be also reassessed to a certain extent. Now, Aries rules your sphere of the 12th house, so you might be also spending money on self-growth, self-development, as well as perhaps this could be a time of healing, and you might decide you want to go to a psychologist, you might decide you want to go on a therapy, or perhaps visit a spiritual retreat. This could be also the case. So here the money might be spent on that healing, on self-growth, soul-searching. For example, especially since Chiron is here present, retrograde in your sphere of the 12th house. So you might be slightly more careful with your finances, with your money spending as well. Right. So whatever the scenario here, you are going to definitely review your financial situation, and this is without a doubt. Now, you might be also spending money on some private matters here. The 12th house is also connected to anything connected to private life. Now, Mars is the co-ruler of your sphere of relationship. So here, perhaps shared and joint resources and how these resources are managed and shared. This might also come into focus at this time, right? So here, if you want to launch anything new, then you'll have to put more effort into it, because here Mars is retrograde. However, if you want to return to some old ideas and projects, it will be a good time for doing so. So here, thank you very much, and let's move into the next sign. All right, so hello, Geminis, and here we got the chart for your for this retrograde. Mars retrograde is in your sign, in your first house. So here, this retrograde hasn't happened for around 15 years. The last time it was in Gemini at the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. This is a big deal, and I'm sure there has been a lot happening in your life since the beginning, well, the end of August, when Mars entered your sign, lots of activity. You might have also felt good about yourself. Your leadership skills may have also been pretty good, and generally it was easier to express yourself, and that was really great. Now, here with Mars retrograde, make sure that you plan carefully. Don't take too much on your shoulders for these final months of the year, because you might realize when Mars stations retrograde that you have overwhelmed your schedule, that you have overwhelmed your daily life, and it is difficult to get, well, any kind of through to the end or get any good result of your hard effort. So be realistic as well. Be realistic. But here with Mars retrograde, you will be questioning your stand within society, your personal appearance as well. And generally here with Mars retrograde in the first house, it might be more difficult from the end of October to self-motivate yourself, and you'll have to push slightly more, put more effort into anything that you do. Now, here, people from the past might return into your life. And generally with Mars retrograde here, this is also about reviewing, reassessing some of your goals, some of your ambitions. You might be slightly more impatient at this time as well. Now, here with Mars retrograde in your sign, you will have to exercise a greater caution, because you might want to take risks. You might feel more adventurous than usual, because Mars will be also out of bounds. So when Mars is out of bounds, it acts out of the character. So here, well, being realistic and about your expectations, but also taking a more of a step-by-step approach, especially if you're going to enter some new waters or close some important deals throughout this time. But overall, you will be reviewing, reassessing your goals at this time. You might be also reviewing some of your friendships here. Aries, Mars rules your 11th house where Aries is present. Some friends might also get in touch with you throughout this period. And this will be also a good time for resolving, reassessing some issues in your life. Now, Mars is also the co-ruler of your sphere of work and employment. So perhaps there could be some also opportunities that have already begun connected to your work before this retrograde. Now, if you were born during Mars retrograde, you may find that this retrograde will actually produce some fruitful results, and you'll be able to motivate yourself better, and you'll feel more self-confident, because that's how Mars retrograde could play with, could play out in your life if you were born during Mars retrograde. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much, and let's move into the next sign. All right, so here we go, Cancers, and welcome to your horoscope for this coming Mars retrograde in the 12th house. So Mars, when I see Mars in the 12th house, well, I often think Mars in the 12th house likes to work independently on their own. That's when they get, individuals with Mars transit in the 12th house get the best results when they focus their energies on their work while working solo, while working independently. So here with Mars retrograde in the 12th house, there is a great focus on your on you on a deeper level. So soul searching is definitely emphasized. There's a strong focus also on your life direction, on your life in general. And you might be also wanting to better understand yourself on a deeper level throughout this transit. Healing is very much emphasized as well. Now, Mars rules your 10th house. That's where Aries is present. So here, things connected to your career progress may also slow down, because I imagine when Mars was in Gemini here since the end of August, there could have been more activity happening at this time, especially since Jupiter was present there as well. Now, when Mars is retrograde, Jupiter will be in Pisces for a period of time until the second part of December. So during this time, anything connected to career progress, anything connected to professional life growth will slow down substantially. So don't get discouraged. Carry on, because these energies will pick up in the second part of January. At that point, Mars will be in a direct motion and Mercury from the 18th as well. Obviously, when Mars stations direct, things won't just pick up instantly. It takes time for Mars to start to move at a regular motion, but at least from the 12th, there will be more progress moving forward. But until then, your career will slow down. If you want to change jobs, you might want to think twice before making this major decision. So you have to get on with a slower motion, with a slower pace of life. But perhaps this could be a steady period of life, even though it will be slow, but you'll be able to reassess also your career goals, reassess your achievements, especially the ones that occurred in the last 2 years since the last Mars retrograde, because the last Mars retrograde was in the sign of Aries, which very much impacted your career life. So here again, any Mars retrograde influences your career life and public life and outside world. Now, this is not a good time for launching a new business. If you can, delay it until at least the second part of January. Right, so thankfully, Mars in Gemini connects really well with Aries. So even though things will move slower in your career, but at least Mars will sextile any placements that you have in Aries. So generally, it will send positive vibes to your 10th house. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much, Cancers, and let's move into the next sign. All right, so hello, Leos, and welcome. I just want to check if I'm definitely recording this video. Yes, I am. Okay, perfect. All right, so Leos, this is your chart for the time when Mars will station retrograde in some parts of the world. It will be on the 31st, in other parts on the 30th. Here, this retrograde is about your friendships, your long-term goals and plans as well, your life philosophy, your religion, but also your home life will be under a review as well as we explore further. Now, here, Mars retrograde. Here, Mars here will be in your 11th house. So you might be reviewing some of your, goals, ambitions, objectives that you have for yourself, for your life. You might be reviewing some friendships in your life, or perhaps some memberships with certain groups, organizations. But also, there could be a situation that occurs with one of your friends, acquaintances, even. And this will be a chance to either review, reassess this relationship, or perhaps let go. This could be the case, but generally you are likely to be reviewing a certain connection in your life throughout this time, or perhaps something from the past might return during a certain communication, during a certain conversation, or perhaps a meeting. And this will be a chance to kind of resolve that dilemma. On a different level, people from the past might also return into your life, friendship, or acquaintances, people that you haven't seen or heard from for a while. Right, so this is one way of seeing this retrograde. Now, Mars rules your 9th house. So if you're going to be traveling throughout this time, foreign travel especially here, make sure that you plan carefully. Leave earlier, because you might experience, there could be delays. There could be last-minute adjustments, cancellations even. So you need to be prepared for that. You might be also reviewing your life philosophy throughout this time, your values as well, your life principles. You might be also returning to some studies, higher education throughout this time as well. Perhaps you might be attending an event that you always wanted to attend, connected to higher learning, connected to something that could expand your wisdom and knowledge. Now here the Mars is the co-ruler of your 4th house. So this is also a time when you might be either visiting your family members, having a get-together with family, or perhaps this could be also related to you contemplating about your home, about your heritage, where you come from. Now this retrograde might also make you question your where is it that you live, where is your home. You'll have a lot of planets here at this time in your 4th house, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, so there could be lots happening, and also a greater need to be at home as well, maybe. But the South Node is here this year, so you are luckier at your outside world, in your career. So get yourself out there, don't hide away, because here you also have Uranus present as well. So I'm sure life has been quite, well, career life has been quite interesting in the last few years. But overall, this Mars retrograde will definitely trigger here some thoughts regarding your home, friendships, life philosophy, life principles as well. Now, something to keep in mind with Mars retrograde is to, well, there's a tendency to speak before thinking, and this will be definitely something that could impact your friendships. So something to definitely keep in mind. All right, so thank you very much, Leos. I wish you, well, I hope this Mars retrograde brings some interesting ideas and opportunities into your life. Bear in mind, Saturn in your 7th house will trine Mars at the end of November. So this will help you to take some of your ideas, to put some of your ideas, thoughts into action, especially the ones that perhaps you worked with at the end of September. All right, so let's move into the next sign. Thank you very much. Let's look at Virgo. So here, Virgo, and this retrograde will happen in your career life, in your career sphere. This is a time when you will be reviewing your career progress. While September could have been a month where you were reassessing certain ideas concerning your professional life path, perhaps you were thinking to quit your job, move to a different department, but you were in two minds, because here Gemini is a dual sign. So you might be pulled into the two different directions throughout your life. This isn't just the case here at this point, but also throughout your life. There's a tendency to kind of be in two different minds. So they want to take two different paths. Indecision, indecisiveness could be also something prominent throughout your life, but here, especially with Mercury retrograde in September, beginning of October, Mars retrograde here. And generally, with Mars retrograde, so here you will be reviewing and reassessing your career professional life path. It's not a good time for changing jobs, because you might not be really satisfied with this job once the stations, this new job, this new role, stations direct mid-January 2023. At the same time, Mars will be out of bounds, so you will be acting out of the character. You might want to take risks. You might want to be more adventurous in your outside work professional life path. Now, you need to be cautious and you need to plan carefully. Plan carefully, because you might not be fully content, satisfied with the decisions, the risks that you take, if any. Might not relate to everyone, but this is definitely about generally also things coming back from the past. You might be also have to rework, redo some important projects that perhaps didn't work out, especially during Mercury retrograde. So generally, this is about reviewing, reassessing your stand in your society, your career, your goals. A really good time for gaining a greater clarity of where is it that you stand with your career? Where is it that you want to be moving forward? Where is it that you'll see yourself in 5 to 10 years? All right, so here Mars rules your 8th house. At the same time, you will be also thinking about investments, perhaps making some major investments in the future, especially since we will begin the eclipses next year on Aries and Libra axis. So your financial sphere will be very much emphasized, between 2023 and 2024. Jupiter will be here as well next year. So your financial sphere, your income, investments, they will be very much emphasized moving forward. So this retrograde gives you an opportunity to think clearly about the next step you want to take moving forward concerning your career. Because if you want to change something, then you might decide to do so very soon, ideally after Mars and Mercury are direct from the second part of January. But this retrograde really prompts you, Mars retrograde, to review, reassess your career goals, objectives. Here, if you might be also thinking about investing your money moving forward as well. Now, Mars also co-rules your communication sphere. So here, with this in mind, you will have to think before you speak, because with Mars retrograde in Gemini, you may say something during important conversations that you might regret. So don't jump too quickly into conclusions. Think carefully, plan carefully as well. Don't take too much on your shoulders. Strategic planning, that's what the 10th house is about. Careful planning, consistency. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much. That's what I've got for you about this Mars retrograde. Let's move into the next sign. Thank you. All right, so here we go. We've got Libra rising. So this retrograde will begin between the 30th and the 31st in your 9th house. Mars in Gemini. Gemini is an earth sign, the same as Libra. Gemini and Libra are friends. So this retrograde might not be as difficult as you may think, because Mars in Gemini is in harmony with your Libra moon, sun, ascendant, or any other placements that you have in Libra. So here with Mars retrograde, any foreign travel will have to be planned carefully, with caution even. You have to leave early, because you might experience delays, cancellations, perhaps a change of time even of your flights. So make sure you check your emails as well, especially if you're going to be traveling, because there could be an adjustment to the time. And if you don't check that, then you might miss your flight. So this could be one case scenario. With Mars retrograde here, you'll be reviewing, reassessing your long-term goals and plans, your life direction as well. This Mars retrograde might also prompt you to return into some old ideas, hobbies as well, perhaps some old movies that you haven't seen for a while. You will want to broaden your horizons here, but generally with the retrograde, this is about doing things that perhaps already started in the past. You might be visiting places, faraway places that you have been to, or perhaps you might meet people from foreign places, foreign countries that you have met in the past. They might get back in touch with you. If you've been awaiting a parcel that got lost in transit, then you might be surprised and receive it during this Mars retrograde. Here, this would be a good time for also reviewing, reassessing your life mission, your life goals, because this might really help you when Mars moves into Cancer next year. After the 26th of March, you might have some really great ideas concerning your career and professional life growth after this retrograde in the 9th house. Mars rules your 7th house as well. So here during this time, you might be traveling with your partner, visiting places that you have been both in the past. This could be the case. You might be learning together. You might accidentally meet your ex-partner during a conference, during some international events as well. So this could be the case. Now, if you wanted to publish a book in the past, or if you started the process ideally in the past, then now with Mars retrograde, you might return to this project. This could be also the case. Now, here, Mars is also the co-ruler of your sphere of finances here. Now, your financial sphere will be very active in the second part of October and in the first part of November, because we will have the eclipses here on your 2nd and 8th house cusp, Scorpio and Taurus, with Mars being the co-ruler of your 2nd house. This is also a time of taking a closer look at your financial sphere, at your money spending habits, at your safety and security in the financial sphere. All right, so here we go, Libras. Next year will be very interesting for you, especially the second part of 2023. You will have a beautiful solar eclipse in your sign, something to look forward to. And then in April, a solar eclipse in Aries, but at the very end of Aries, which will also illuminate your sphere of investment. But here we go. Thank you very much. And let's move into the next sign. All right, so here we go, Scorpios. Here, Scorpio, and this is your 8th house. So this is actually quite interesting because Scorpio is naturally connected to the 8th house. It's the house of transformation, and regeneration. Very deep and transformative energies in general. So here, Scorpio being the ruler and the traditional ruler of the 8th house, and the Mars being here present, the co-ruler of Mars. Very interesting combination of energy. So here, with this transit, dear Scorpio, Scorpio is also my rising sign. So here it will also affect me. Lots of energies here as well in the 1st house. So this is going to be a very eventful time, the end of October and until mid-November, because here with the eclipse, the solar eclipse in Scorpio in the 1st house at 2 degrees, and also with all the planets here, Mercury, Sun, Venus here. Now the South Node is here until mid-2023. So generally we benefit more through collaborations, connecting to another, to generally unions, connections. They benefit us more than kind of independent work. But regardless of that, you've got here Mars in the 8th house. So here with Mars retrograde in the 8th house. So the 8th house is also connected to, sexual energy. And here with Mars retrograde, for some people, this energy could slow down, and the chemistry, the affection, the romance might not really play such important role in the final months of the year. There could be a greater focus on healing, on transformation, on generally putting the inner energies of transforming the area of life that lost its spark and purpose, on detox, on purification as well. And soul searching is also emphasized, but generally here with this transit, this is also about, you might be reviewing, reassessing your intimate relationship. You might be also reviewing, reassessing shared and joint resources with your partner. Are they shared equally? Are they shared in a fair way? Now here with Mars retrograde, this is also about reviewing any investments. If you are kind of involved in any schemes connected to benefits or childcare help, then perhaps there could be also some delays with payouts, because anything could happen here with Mars retrograde in Gemini. Gemini is connected to communication, transportation. So here that could be also disturbed throughout this time. Now, Mars rules your 6th house of work and employment. So here you might also experience delays in the matters connected to work, in the matters connected to your everyday life routine. For this reason I mentioned earlier, it's important to plan carefully, especially during Mars, when Mars is in a direct motion in Gemini, so that you don't take too much on your shoulders, because you might realize during this retrograde that you're not able to reach all the goals that you set for yourself, because perhaps you are overly ambitious. Now, if things slow down at your work, look at it in a positive way, because this could also mean that things are moving, even though they are moving slowly, they are moving at a steady pace. But at the same time, you will be reviewing, reassessing your employment at this time as well. And generally, perhaps someone could get in touch with you, someone that, say, you worked with, an ex-coworker. Now here, if you have your own business, this could be also related to some of your employees, or an employee might get in touch with you and ask for help with a job. They might be job hunting and they might ask you for some help. Now here, Mars obviously is your co-ruler, so you'll be reviewing, reassessing your goals, your milestones, and generally this is also a time when you might be reviewing anything that is initiated by that solar eclipse in your sign on the 25th of October. All right, so thank you very much, Scorpios, and let's move into the next sign. Okay, so Sagittarius. So here in your seventh house is connected to relationships, love, marriage, partnership. So here with this in mind, you will be reviewing your relationship. So retrogrades are about reviewing, reassessing. If you have been working with someone like on a project, then you might find that it's more difficult to cooperate together or to get anything or take anything off the ground. So you have to push forward. You have to be more patient and generally think before you speak, because there is a tendency towards speaking before thinking here, and sometimes regretting what what you said. So this could be also something to kind of watch out for. But overall, with Mars retrograde here in the seventh house, the seventh house deals with business partnerships as well. And this is also when you might have to sign some documents related to some, well, anything connected to even a project, especially if you're a freelancer, if you're self-employed. Now, I would advise to make sure you check everything before you deliver any project, before you finalize any documents, any contracts as well throughout this time. Now here, Mars retrograde could also bring back some people from the past throughout this time. So this could be also the case here with this retrograde. Now, Mars retrograde here in the seventh house. So here, this retrograde really focuses on your relationship, on how you communicate with one another, how you kind of your dialogue, your communication skills. This will be also under a great review here. Now, obviously, your relationships, any issues, dilemmas may also come back, and you may have to resolve them, work on them. Now, here, this retrograde, Mars rules your fifth house, so you might also return to some old hobbies, old interests. You might be reviewing your parenting style. If you wanted to book a holiday before this retrograde, then this retrograde now might also prompt you to return to that project, and you might make that booking, make that holiday happen. So generally, retrogrades are good for returning to projects that we began before the retrograde, or perhaps for returning to something that's occurred already in the past that was left unresolved. Now, Mars retrograde, here Mars co-rules your 12th house. So this is also a time that is good for healing wounds connected to relationships, marriage, partnerships as well. Soul searching is emphasized. You might feel like you want to retreat at times as well, contemplate, especially since the sun will be here until the second part of November, at which point it will move into Sagittarius, into your sign. And that will only be in the final days of November. So during the initial 3 weeks of Mars retrograde, you might find it beneficial to kind of review, reassess your personal relationships. And especially since Venus will be in your 12th house as well. So you might feel like you're not appreciated for your efforts. You might feel like you're not being seen. Communication might be also a struggle. So take it easy and bear in mind that you've got that those 3 planets transiting your 12th house at this time. So generally, you might feel like contemplate a lot, review, reassess certain projects, ideas, relationships in your life, depending on your circumstances. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much. And let's move into the next sign. All right, so hello, Capricorns, and welcome. So here we go. We've got this retrograde happening in your 6th house. So here, the 6th house is connected to health, to everyday routine, your diet, employment, work. So you might see that certain projects at your work might be more difficult to deliver. So you will have to watch your deadlines. You will have to watch your deadlines. Things will slow down. It might be more difficult to cooperate with your coworkers, or generally if you work in a team, even though Mars in the 6th house really likes to work independently, but if you have to work with another, you will have to learn to cooperate harmoniously, because you might feel impulsive at times, impatient even, something to really keep in mind as well. Now, With Mars retrograde here, you might be returning to some old projects from the past. It's a good time for reapplying to a job that perhaps you applied for in the past, but you never heard back. So you might be reapplying, you might be reconnecting with people that you worked with. But also, this is also a good time for reviewing your diet, your health regime. Now, this is also when you might have some health checkups that perhaps didn't occur in the past, that were cancelled, that you never had time to fulfill. So that will be also a good time for kind of doing those health checkups that you didn't get a chance to do. Now, with Mars retrograde here in the 6th house, even though you might have to push yourself at times, even get out of your comfort zone with Mars being out of bounds, you need to remember also to protect your energies and make sure you find time to rest, because you might easily get drained, and then this will lead to demotivation. So make sure that you find a healthy balance between your work life and your home life. Mars rules your 4th house. Mars is retrograde. Here you'll be working hard to achieve your goals and milestones and deadlines. At the same time, make sure that you find a healthy balance here between the home and the work. At the same time, you might be also questioning your emotional safety and security in your life. And generally, you might be questioning whether you're satisfied with your home situation, whether something needs to change as well. Or perhaps for some Capricorns, this could be a time when you return back into the office. The ruler of the 4th house in the 6th. So yes, you might have to spend more time at your office throughout the final days of the year. And perhaps you might not really enjoy it. Now, depending on your circumstances, of course, here I'm giving you some ideas. Now, Mars also co-rules your... So you might be also reviewing some friendships in your life, or perhaps you might work with a friend on a certain idea or project of some sort. All right, so here we go, Capricorns, thank you very much. So here, delays and inconsistency might be the key components of this phase, of this retrograde, because here Capricorn is a sign connected to self-discipline, structure, motivation, self-motivation, self-discipline. With Mars retrograde, well, this might be difficult to achieve. It might be quite frustrating. For this reason, I mentioned self-care, self-love. Thank you very much, and let's move into the next sign. Hello, Aquarius, and welcome to your horoscope for Mars retrograde in Gemini. This Mars retrograde will take place in your 5th house. So the 5th house deals with our hobbies, interests, holiday rentals, as well, fun, recreation, entertainment, children, young people, romance, of course, as well. So here with Mars retrograde, perhaps an ex-romantic partner may return into your life. But overall, here, generally, if you are single, dating might be slightly more frustrating at times. When it comes to hobbies and interests, you might want to return to some of your old hobbies, old interests. You might want to refresh some of your skills and talents. Now, for those of you who work in the creative industry, Mars is the planet connected to motivation, high energy. So here with Mars being retrograde, you need to put more effort into anything that you do, especially if it's brand new. If you want to carry on with whatever that you started before Mars station retrograde, it might be quite enjoyable. It might be not as frustrating. Also, you might experience creative blockages at times. So here, something to remember, something to keep in mind, and don't get overly frustrated if this is the case, because that's Mars retrograde. Perhaps dedicate the excess of energies on something different in the meantime. Now here, if you have children, you might be reviewing, reassessing some of your parenting style as well. Now that Mars rules your 3rd house, so here communication will play a very important role. You might receive some news that you have been waiting for a long time. Now here with Mars retrograde ruling your 3rd house, this is also a time when you might get in touch with your cousins, your relatives. You might be also reassessing the relationship you have with your neighbors, with your community. Your communication style might change. You might, at times, you might feel slightly anxious. You might question your communication style, the dialogue that you have with others. Well, Bear in mind that Gemini and Aquarius, these are air signs. So whatever the scenario here, Gemini and Aquarius, these are friends. They collaborate in a trine. So might not be such a bad retrograde, so difficult. But overall here, Mars also co-rules your career. So you might that the career progress has slowed down, well, to a certain extent in the final months of the year and in January. But this could also prompt you to reassess some of your career goals, some of your objectives for the future. Now, Mars and Saturn will be in signs that are in harmony. Saturn is in your first house. So especially towards November, you might see that some of your efforts might be appreciated, that you can achieve some of the goals that you've been working on. Right, so more on that in the November horoscope, but overall, I hope this Mars retrograde brings some interesting opportunities into your life. And even perhaps you might even form a solid bond with the people, perhaps from your community during this time. Here, Mars rules your third house. All right, so thank you very much, and let's move into the next sign. Hello, Pisces, and welcome to your horoscope for this coming Mars retrograde in Gemini. This retrograde will start around the 30th, 31st, depending on where in the world you are, and it will trigger your fourth house. So here, your family, your roots, your heritage will be especially emphasized at this time. Now here, possible renovations may take place, especially the ones that were planned before this retrograde. Now, hopefully you didn't plan too much during Mars transit in Gemini between August the 20th and the end of October, because now when Mars stations retrograde on the 30th, 31st of October until the 12th of January, it might be difficult to get through to the end with all the projects that you have set for this period. Well, unless you planned carefully, then this will be a different case scenario. So while you can, be realistic about your expectations for the final months of the year regarding anything to do with your home, especially in your finances, because Mars rules your second house of income. If you want to put your house up for sale during the final months of the year, this might not be the best time for doing so, because you might not be satisfied with the outcome, with the money that you get for your property. Now, if you buy a house during a retrograde, and I'm speaking from my experience, there is likely to be a lot to repair, surprises that you didn't know about, and generally renovations will take ages to be accomplished if you buy a house during a retrograde. So I don't recommend it. But overall, now, changes related to the family plans as well. So if you have some big plans for Mars retrograde periods, things might change, in the last minute. If you're flying to see your family, perhaps there could be a flight delay, flight cancellations, because here Mars co-rules your ninth house. This is where Scorpio is present. So really pay attention to any foreign travel connected to family gatherings throughout this period. Plan carefully, leave earlier, check your flights, make sure there are no time adjustments taking place. And if there are, leave earlier, and so on. But here, this retrograde is also great for returning to home-related projects. You might decide you want to do a family tree, or learn more about your heritage, where you come from, your roots. You might want to do a DNA test. That's apparently quite popular to find out more about yourself on a deeper level. Right, so here Mars rules your second house of income. So here, be cautious with money spending habits on your property, on your house, on your flat, because you might want to take risks out of the ordinary, especially since Mars will be out of bounds. So something to definitely keep in mind. Now, as I said, any foreign travel might here connected to family relationships. This is also something to watch out for. Now here, Jupiter will be in your sign throughout this retrograde. So that's really great. Jupiter will be here until around the 20th of December in Pisces. So this could be a pretty lucky time for you. because even though Mars will be retrograde, you'll have this abundant and lovely energy that will come with Jupiter in Pisces, where Jupiter feels fantastic. So thank you very much. And I wish you, I wish you a pleasant retrograde. All right, so here we go. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this video. So as I was recording this video and going through each sign and with the chart, kind of made me think that maybe one day I will do it as a live video. That could be quite interesting. So I think that will be my goal moving forward, and we'll see where it takes me. But in the meantime, I hope this retrograde won't bring too much disruption into your life. And until the next time, thank you very much.